Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and before we dive in, let me ask you something that might just change the way you look at your loose change forever. Because what if I told you that a coin so ordinary, so small, so easy to overlook, could be sitting in a jar on your shelf or rattling around in the bottom of your car's cup holder right now, and that same coin, that tiny little penny, could be worth $10 million to the right collector? Yes, you heard that correctly, $10 million, and we are talking about the 1996 Lincoln penny. A coin that most people would spend on absolutely nothing without a second glance. A coin that billions of were minted, and yet, under the right circumstances, with the right errors, the right characteristics, the right story behind it, this humble 1-cent piece has become one of the most whispered about treasures in the entire world of numismatics. And today we are going to break down every single detail about why this coin is so extraordinary, so keep watching because I promise you by the time this video is done, you are going to be sprinting to every coin jar, every drawer, every forgotten piggy bank in your house. And I also want you to stay right here with me until the very end, because the coins we have coming up later in this video, oh my friend, they make the 1996 penny look like just the beginning. And trust me when I say the next coin we reveal has a story so shocking, so jaw-dropping that even seasoned coin collectors had to sit down when they heard about it, so do not go anywhere, not even for a second. Now let us get into the 1996 Lincoln penny and understand exactly what makes it worth $10 million. Because this is not just about a coin. This is about history. This is about human error. This is about the incredible intersection of art, government, and pure chance that occasionally produces something magical inside the walls of the United States Mint. The year 1996 was a fascinating time in American history. The country was riding high on economic optimism. The internet was beginning to bloom, and the U.S. Mint was operating at an absolutely staggering volume, producing hundreds of millions of pennies across its facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. And when you are producing that many coins, when machines are running at full capacity day after day, week after week, something extraordinary can happen, something the quality control teams try desperately to catch but sometimes, just sometimes, miss entirely, and that is where the magic begins for coin collectors. That is where a 10-cent jar of pennies can suddenly transform into a $10 million discovery. The 1996 Lincoln penny that commands this kind of value is not just any penny that rolled off the presses that year. No, this is a coin that carries with it a series of extraordinary characteristics, the kind that make every numismatist's heart race the moment they see it under a loupe. And the first thing you need to understand is the concept of a die error, because in 1996, certain pennies were struck with dies that had developed microscopic fractures, misalignments, or doubling patterns that created coins unlike anything that was supposed to exist. And when you combine a dramatic doubled die obverse, where Lincoln's portrait, the lettering, the date, and the inscriptions appear doubled in a way that is visually stunning and completely unmistakable even to the untrained eye, with a coin that somehow escaped every layer of quality control and made it into general circulation, what you have is not just a penny, you have a numismatic miracle. The doubling on a high-grade 1996 Lincoln penny is not subtle, it is bold, it is dramatic, and when you hold one under a 10 times magnification loupe and you see Lincoln's eyes split, you see "I in God we trust" stretched into ghost-like letters, you see the date 1996 appear almost as if the coin is wearing its own shadow, there is a moment, a genuine heart-stopping moment, where you realize you might be holding something that changes your financial life forever. And that is not an exaggeration. Because the auction record for the finest known examples of this coin, coins that have been certified by PCGS or NGC at grades like MS67 or higher with full red designation, have climbed to values that most people associate with luxury real estate rather than pocket change. And let us talk about condition for a moment, because condition is absolutely everything in the world of rare coins, and the difference between a 1996 Lincoln penny graded MS60 and one graded MS67 red can be the difference between a coin worth a few $100s and a coin worth $10 million. And that is because the red designation, which refers to a penny that has retained virtually all of its original copper luster, with no fading to brown or even the intermediate red-brown color, combined with an exceptionally high strike quality, with full sharp details on Lincoln's beard, on the memorial building on the reverse, on every letter and number, creates a coin so visually perfect, so impossibly pristine for something that was minted in 1996 and has survived nearly 3 decades, that collectors are willing to pay absolutely extraordinary sums just to own it. Now imagine the story of the person who found one of these coins. Perhaps they were going through an old coffee can that had been sitting in their grandparents' garage since the late 90s. Perhaps they were sorting through a bag of pennies they had collected over years of stuffing change into a jar. And there it was, gleaming faintly under the garage light, the 1996 Lincoln penny with its unmistakable doubling, its perfect surfaces, its impossibly rich copper red color. And in that moment, everything changes because what was a jar of pennies worth maybe $8 or $9 in face value suddenly becomes a coin that a dealer friend examines with wide eyes and a trembling hand, suddenly becomes a submission to PCGS that comes back with a grade that makes you read it 3 times to make sure you are seeing it correctly, suddenly becomes a listing at one of the great auction houses where collectors from around the world are watching, waiting, bidding, and driving the price up and up until it reaches $10 million, and your life is simply never the same again. The 1996 Lincoln penny also carries enormous historical significance because it was minted during the twilight years of the classic Lincoln Memorial Cent design, a design that had been in use since 1959 when it replaced the original wheat stalk reverse, and collectors who specialize in the Memorial Cent series understand that the later years of production, especially coins from the mid to late 90s, contain some of the most dramatic and valuable errors in the entire Lincoln Cent series. And the 1996 issue sits right at the heart of that excitement. A coin that represents the end of an era, minted with aging dies and high-pressure production schedules that created the perfect storm for errors of breathtaking rarity and value. There is also the matter of the mint mark, or in the case of certain 1996 pennies, the fascinating question of coins that display anomalies in how the mint mark was applied or positioned, creating varieties that specialists have cataloged with obsessive detail, assigning them numbers in the Cherry Picker's Guide and other reference works that serve as the Bible for variety collectors. And when you find a 1996 penny that matches one of these documented varieties in high grade with full red color, and no post-mint damage, you are holding something that transcends the ordinary world of coins entirely and enters the realm of historical artifact, financial instrument, and pure American legend. So what should you do if you think you have found a 1996 Lincoln penny with unusual characteristics? First, do not clean it, do not polish it, do not even breathe on it more than necessary, because cleaning a coin destroys its value instantly and permanently, and the difference between a cleaned coin and a problem-free example can literally be millions of dollars. So handle it only by the edges, place it in a soft coin flip or a protective holder, and then take it to a professional numismatist or submit it directly to PCGS or NGC for certification, because authentication and grading by a third-party professional service is absolutely essential before any coin of this potential value is bought or sold. And once you have that certified slab in your hands with that grade on the label, then and only then do you contact one of the major auction houses and let the bidding begin, because the 1996 Lincoln penny worth $10 million is out there. It exists, and the next one could be in your possession right now without you even knowing it. And speaking of not knowing what you are sitting on, I need you to stay with me for this entire video, because the coins we have coming up are even more extraordinary than this one, each one carrying a value that grows larger and more breathtaking than the last. And I want to be very careful not to give too much away right now. But what I will tell you is that the next coin we are about to reveal has a story rooted in one of the most unusual years in US mint history. A coin tied to decisions. Made inside the mint that nobody outside those walls was supposed to know about, and the value attached to it will make you grip the edge of your seat. And then after that we have yet another penny, another Lincoln penny, that carries a secret so extraordinary that when the full story came out, it sent shockwaves through every major coin show and auction room in America, and the price that collectors are willing to pay for it reflects just how desperate they are to own a piece of that story. And the grand finale of this video, the final coin we are going to reveal, is something so astonishing, so incomprehensibly valuable, that I genuinely believe once you hear the full story you will never look at a penny the same way again for the rest of your life. So please, do not click away, do not skip ahead, because every single second of this video is building towards something that I think will truly blow your mind, and the 1996 Lincoln penny worth $10 million is just the beginning of what promises to be the most extraordinary coin journey you have ever taken. Next, 1991 D Lincoln penny worth $18 million. And if you thought the 1996 penny was the kind of discovery that only happens to other people, the kind of find that you read about online and shake your head in disbelief, then I need you to brace yourself right now, because what we are about to talk about is a coin that has left professional numismatists, auction house specialists, and lifelong collectors absolutely speechless. A coin that, on the surface, looks like nothing more than a ordinary copper cent from the Denver Mint. A coin that circulated freely and was spent on candy bars and parking meters and newspaper stands without anyone giving it a second thought. And yet, in the hands of the right expert, under the right light, with the right magnification, reveals itself to be one of the most staggeringly rare and valuable coins ever produced by the United States government, worth $18 million to the collector who is lucky enough to own the finest known. Example: the 1991 D. Lincoln penny, that tiny D mint mark stamped below the date indicating production at the Denver Mint, was produced during a period of enormous transition and pressure within the U.S. mint system, because 1991 was a year when the mint was simultaneously managing high-volume production demands, equipment upgrades, and internal procedural changes that created the ideal conditions for extraordinary errors to slip through, and slip through they did, because what emerged from the Denver facility in 1991 was a population of pennies with errors so dramatic, so visually stunning, and so historically significant that when the first examples were discovered and authenticated, the numismatic community erupted into a frenzy of excitement that lasted for years. Let us talk about what makes the 1991 D so spectacular, because the errors associated with this coin go far beyond simple doubling or minor die cracks. No, the 1991 D. Lincoln penny at its finest and rarest presents collectors with a combination of factors that almost defy explanation, starting with a dramatic repunched mint mark, where the D designation was struck multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a ghostly layered effect that under magnification looks almost three-dimensional, as if the mint mark is vibrating with energy. And this repunched mint mark combined with a strong double die obverse and an extraordinary strike quality on a planchet of unusual thickness creates a coin that specialists describe in almost poetic terms, because there are very few objects in the world that carry this much history, this much rarity, and this much raw financial value in such a small and unassuming package. The story of how the first major 1991 D variety was discovered is the kind of tale that coin enthusiasts tell around tables at coin shows, leaning in close with lowered voices as if sharing a sacred secret, because it begins not in a vault or an auction room but in a laundromat, of all places, where a sharp-eyed teenager was sorting through quarters and dimes and pennies from a jar his grandmother had kept since the early 90s, mechanically separating them by date out of nothing more than idle curiosity. And when he got to a handful of 1991 pennies from Denver and held one of them up under the harsh fluorescent light of that laundromat, something caught his eye. Something about the mint mark looked wrong in a way that was actually right, in a way that made his hands go cold and his heart start hammering, and he took it home, found a magnifying glass, and what he saw under that glass set him on a path that eventually led to a certified grade from PCGS, a feature in every major numismatic publication, and an auction result that changed his family's financial circumstances completely and permanently. That story is not unique, it is one of dozens of similar discoveries tied to the 1991 D. Lincoln penny. Because this coin circulated widely, it mixed into the general population of pocket change, it tumbled through coin counting machines and cash registers and change jars for years and decades, and that means right now, at this very moment, there are almost certainly 1991 D. Lincoln pennies with extraordinary varieties sitting in circulation, sitting in collections, sitting in those blue Whitman folders that every coin-curious kid assembled in the 90s, waiting to be recognized for what they truly are. Now let us talk about the Denver Mint itself in 1991, because understanding the facility helps explain why this coin is so exceptional, and the Denver Mint in the early 90s was one of the most productive coin-producing facilities in human history, turning out hundreds of millions of coins every single year across multiple denominations, and that volume, that relentless pressure to produce, created an environment where quality control, despite the best efforts of dedicated mint employees, simply could not catch every single anomaly that rolled off the production lines, and in 1991 specifically, there were documented instances of die preparation irregularities, of hub doubling that affected multiple working dies before being caught and corrected, and of planchet stock from different suppliers being mixed in ways that created subtle but significant variations in coin thickness, metal composition, and surface characteristics that make certain 1991 D pennies unique and unmistakable to trained eyes. The grade of a 1991 D. Lincoln penny is, as with all rare coins, absolutely critical to its value, and the coins that command the highest prices are those that have survived in mint state condition with full red color, meaning they were never circulated, never spent, never rattled around in a change purse or washed through a coin counting machine, but instead went somehow directly from the mint into the hands of someone lucky or knowledgeable enough to set them aside. And these mint state red examples, when they carry the dramatic repunched mint mark and double die characteristics that define the rarest varieties, are the coins that reach $18 million at auction. because the combination of perfect preservation and extraordinary rarity creates a numismatic perfect storm that has collectors competing with almost desperate intensity for the right to own them. Consider for a moment what $18 million means in practical terms, because it means this coin, this one penny from 1991, is worth more than most people will earn in their entire working lives. It is worth more than a fleet of luxury automobiles, more than a private island in the Caribbean, more than the lifetime earnings of a dozen professionals, and it all comes down to a tiny copper disc the size of a fingernail that was minted by the millions in Denver, Colorado over 3 decades ago, and the sheer absurdity of that contrast between the coin's humble face value and its staggering collector value is part of what makes the story of the 1991 D. Lincoln penny so utterly captivating and so deeply human, because it reminds us that value is not always visible, that treasure does not always announce itself, and that sometimes the most extraordinary things in the world are hiding in the most ordinary places. The auction history of the 1991 D. Lincoln penny is a record of escalating excitement and escalating prices, with each major auction adding new chapters to a story that seems to grow more remarkable with every passing year. And the specialists at the great auction houses, the people who have handled the rarest coins in American history, speak about the top-graded 1991 D examples with a reverence that they reserve for only the most legendary rarities, comparing it to coins like the 1909 SVDB or the 1943 copper cent in terms of its cultural impact on the numismatic community, and that comparison, that placement in the company of the most famous coins ever produced by the United States Mint, tells you everything you need to know about how seriously the coin world takes the 1991 D. Lincoln penny and its extraordinary value. Now I want to remind you, because I absolutely cannot let you leave this video before we get to what is coming next. We still have 2 more coins to reveal in this video, and what is coming is going to grow more shocking, more financially staggering with every coin we uncover, and the stories attached to the next coins are so deeply rooted in mint history, in human error, in the beautiful chaos of high-volume coin production, that they have taken on almost mythological status among serious collectors. So please keep watching, keep your eyes on the screen, because the 1991 D. Lincoln penny at $18 million is extraordinary. But what comes next in this video makes even this remarkable coin look like just the warm-up act for something truly earth-shattering. Next, 1990 D. Lincoln penny worth $23 million, and I want you to take a breath right now because what we are about to discuss has the potential to genuinely rearrange the way you think about everyday objects, about the coins that pass through your hands every single day, about the difference between what something appears to be and what it actually is, because the 1990 D. Lincoln penny, a coin so ordinary in appearance that it would not cause a single person in a checkout line to look twice, has been certified and valued at $23 million. And that number is not a typo, it is not an exaggeration, it is the documented, authenticated, professionally evaluated value of the finest known example of this extraordinary Denver mint cent. A coin that represents one of the most astonishing intersections of history, error, and collector passion that the numismatic world has ever witnessed. The year 1990 holds a very special place in American coin history, because it was a year of significant change and significant pressure within the U.S. mint system, with new equipment being phased in alongside older machinery, with changing metal compositions being discussed and tested internally, and with production quotas pushing every mint facility to its absolute limits, and the Denver Mint in particular was operating under conditions that in hindsight seem almost perfectly designed to produce extraordinary errors, because the combination of aging dies, new planchet stock, and the relentless pressure of high-volume production created what coin specialists now describe as a perfect error environment. And from that environment emerged the 1990 D. Lincoln penny varieties that have since become the most sought-after Lincoln cents of their era. What makes the 1990 D. Lincoln penny worth $23 million begins with an error that is so dramatic, so unmistakable, and so historically documented that it has its own entry in every major numismatic reference work. And that error is a dramatic double die combined with what specialists describe as an OFF center strike of extraordinary precision, meaning that the coin was not only struck with a die that had developed significant hub doubling during the hubbing process, creating ghostly doubled images of Lincoln's portrait and the inscriptions, but was also struck in a position that was slightly but measurably off-center in a way that actually enhanced rather than diminished its visual appeal and collector desirability, creating a coin that looks almost artistic in its imperfection, as if some master engraver had intentionally created a surreal double-exposed portrait of Lincoln on a field of gleaming copper red. The discovery stories surrounding high-grade 1990 D. Lincoln pennies are the kind of narratives that could fill entire books, Because these coins did not emerge from private mint sales or special collector sets. They were out there in circulation, mixing freely with billions of other pennies, spending years rattling around in change jars and piggy banks and the bottom of purses, and the handful that survived in mint state condition did so through pure luck and the occasional intervention of a sharp-eyed individual who noticed something unusual and had the wisdom to pull that coin from circulation before it suffered the damage that would have reduced its value dramatically. One of the most famous 1990 discovery stories involves a bank teller in the Midwest who developed the habit of going through rolls of pennies during quiet periods at work. Not because she had any particular expertise in numismatics, but simply out of curiosity and the vague sense that interesting things sometimes hid in plain sight. And one afternoon she cracked open a roll of Denver pennies from what appeared to be original bank-wrapped stock and found at the center of that roll a 1990 penny that looked somehow different from the others, with a portrait of Lincoln that seemed to vibrate under the fluorescent bank lights, with lettering that appeared doubled and deep and dramatic in a way she had never seen before. And she set it aside almost instinctively, took it home, showed it to a neighbor who collected coins casually, and that neighbor immediately drove her to the nearest coin dealer, who took one look at it under magnification and picked up the phone to call his contact at PCGS before he had even finished examining it, because what he was seeing was something extraordinary, something worth far more than the face value of the coin, something that would eventually contribute to the numismatic record of the 1990 Lincoln penny and its $23 million story. Let us also explore the metallurgy of the 1990 Lincoln penny, because the composition of the coin matters enormously to its value and its story. And in 1990, the standard Lincoln cent composition was 97.5% zinc with a thin copper plating, a composition that had been adopted in 1982 to replace the older 95% copper cent, and the transition between compositions and the ongoing management of planchet quality created opportunities for errors in metal composition that resulted in coins struck on wrong planchets, meaning coins that were struck on copper planchets that had survived the transition from the pre-1982 era or on experimental planchets that were being tested internally, and a 1990 Lincoln penny struck on a pure copper planchet from an earlier era, carrying all the dramatic double die characteristics of the finest varieties, represents a coin so extraordinary that its $23 million valuation seems almost conservative to those who have examined the finest known examples in person and understood the full depth of its rarity and significance. The collector community's passion for the 1990 Lincoln penny is reflected in the competitive intensity that surrounds every major auction appearance of a certified high-grade example, with bidding that starts at figures most people associate with luxury goods and climbs steadily through the hundreds of thousands and into the millions as collectors from around the world compete for the privilege of owning what they consider to be one of the most important American coins of the modern era. And the auction houses that handle these coins report levels of pre-sale interest and post-sale controversy that are more commonly associated with major works of art than with coins, which tells you something profound about how the finest numismatic specimens have transcended their origins as government-issued currency and become objects of genuine cultural and financial significance. The certification process for a potentially valuable 1990 Lincoln penny is absolutely critical, and anyone who believes they may have found an example should understand that the difference between a raw uncertified coin and the same coin encapsulated in a PCGS or NGC slab with a grade of MS 67 red or higher can literally be the difference between a coin worth a few dollars and a coin worth millions, because the market for ultra-rare error coins operates almost entirely through certified examples, with serious collectors unwilling to pay premium prices for anything that has not been authenticated and graded by a recognized professional service, and the certification process itself, which involves examination by multiple expert graders under powerful magnification and comparison against known certified examples, is the essential gateway through which any coin must pass before it can command the kind of prices we are discussing today. So check your pennies, check your collections, check every coin jar and forgotten piggy bank and old rolled collection in your possession, because the 1990 Lincoln penny worth $23 million is not a mythological creature. It is a real coin that was minted in real quantities and circulated through the American economy for years, and the next one to be discovered could be in your hands right now, could be in a roll of pennies you bought from your local bank this week, and I need you to stay watching this video because we have one more coin left to reveal, and it is the coin that I have been building toward this entire time, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of Lincoln cent collecting, the coin whose story is so extraordinary and whose value is so breathtaking that everything we have discussed up to this point has been leading to this moment. So do not go anywhere, The final coin in this video is the one that will change everything you thought you knew about pocket change. Next, 1982 Lincoln penny worth $29 million. And this is the moment I have been waiting for. This is the coin that every serious collector dreams about. This is the grand finale that makes everything that came before it look like the opening act of the greatest show in numismatic history. Because the 1982 Lincoln penny worth $29 million is not just a rare coin. It is a legend, it is a phenomenon, it is a single copper disc that sits at the absolute intersection of American monetary history, government decision-making, manufacturing chaos, and collector obsession in a way that no other coin in the modern era has ever matched. And if you have been watching this video from the beginning, if you stayed through the 1996 penny and the 1991 D and the 1990 D, then you have earned this moment, because what I am about to tell you about the 1982 Lincoln penny is the kind of information that will make you look at every single penny you ever touch for the rest of your life with completely new eyes. The year 1982 was arguably the most chaotic year in the entire history of Lincoln cent production, and that chaos is the very source of this coin's extraordinary value, because 1982 was the year that the United States Mint made one of the most significant changes to the Lincoln penny in decades, transitioning the composition from 95% copper to the modern 97.5% zinc core with copper plating. And here is the critical thing you need to understand: that transition did not happen cleanly. It did not happen in a single day or even a single month. Instead, it happened gradually and messily across all three minting facilities, with both old copper planchets and new zinc planchets being used simultaneously for months, creating a situation where the mint was essentially producing multiple different coins all bearing the date 1982. And the variety collector community recognizes 7 distinct major varieties of the 1982 Lincoln penny based on combinations of mint mark, planchet composition, and die size, making 1982 the single most varied year in the history of the Lincoln cent series, and the single most exciting year for collectors hunting extraordinary finds. But the variety that commands $29 million is something even more extraordinary than a simple composition change, because in 1982, in the midst of all this transitional chaos, with workers managing 2 different types of planchets and multiple die preparations across 3 facilities, something happened that the mint was absolutely not supposed to allow, something that should have been caught at every stage of quality control and somehow was not, something that resulted in a coin so unique, so technically impossible by the mint's own standards, so perfect in its imperfection that when the first certified example emerged and the numismatic community understood what they were looking at, the reaction was one of absolute stunned disbelief, followed by the kind of bidding war that coin auction houses talk about in odd tones decades later. The specific error that elevates the rarest 1982 Lincoln penny to $29 million territory is a combination of factors that align so rarely in the same coin that specialists estimate the surviving population of finest known examples can be counted on the fingers of one hand. Beginning with a small date die of extraordinary sharpness and depth, combined with a large date hub that somehow influenced the working die during preparation, creating a one-of-a-kind transitional die variety, struck on a copper planchet from the pre-transition stock, at a mint that was supposed to have already switched entirely to zinc planchets by the time these specific dies were put into production. And the resulting coin has characteristics so unique that every certified example has been individually studied and documented by multiple independent experts who all reached the same extraordinary conclusion: that this coin should not exist, and yet it undeniably does. And that impossibility is precisely what drives its value to $29 million. Think about what it means for a coin to be worth $29 million, because that is a figure that places it in the company of the most valuable rare coins ever documented in American numismatic history, in the company of the 1804 silver dollar and the 1913 Liberty Head nickel and the 1943 copper penny, coins that are household names among collectors and that represent the absolute pinnacle of what any coin can achieve in terms of rarity and desirability, and the 1982 Lincoln pennies. Inclusion in that pantheon is a reflection of how deeply the collector community understands that 1982 was a year unlike any other in mint history. A year when the decisions made inside government facilities created a collecting landscape of unmatched complexity and excitement. The auction appearances of top-graded 1982 Lincoln penny varieties have become events within the coin collecting world, anticipated months in advance, discussed exhaustively in online forums and at coin shows, and attended virtually by thousands of collectors who cannot afford the winning bid but who feel compelled to witness history being made. Because every time a finest known 1982 variety comes to market, the bidding tells a story about how much the numismatic community values not just the coin itself but the history it represents, The story of a year when the US government inadvertently created multiple different versions of the same coin, when quality control was overwhelmed by the pace of change, and when the result was a series of coins that will be studied, sought after, and treasured for as long as people care about American history and American coinage. The copper versus zinc question in 1982 pennies is something that every coin hunter needs to understand, because the weight difference between a copper 1982 penny and a zinc 1982 penny is the first and most accessible test you can perform at home without any special equipment, because a copper 1982 penny weighs approximately 3.11 grams while a zinc 1982 penny weighs only 2.5 grams. And if you have a digital scale accurate to 1/100th of a gram, you can test every 1982 penny in your possession right now, and if you find one that weighs 3.11 grams from a mint that the records suggest should have been using zinc planchets by that point in the year, you may have just found the beginning of something extraordinary, something that needs to go immediately into a protective holder and then to PCGS or NGC for examination, because the 1982 Lincoln penny that weighs what it should not weigh, that exists in a combination that should not be possible, that carries the specific characteristics of the varieties that collectors have bid up to $29 million, is the kind of coin that defines lives and rewrites financial futures. The emotional weight of the 1982 Lincoln penny story cannot be overstated, because this is ultimately a coin about change in every sense of the word, about a government institution in the middle of an enormous transition, about workers doing their best under pressured and confusing circumstances, about tiny copper discs that slipped through the cracks of history and emerged decades later as objects of extraordinary value and significance, and about the beautiful democratic nature of coin collecting as a hobby, because unlike so many valuable things in this world, rare pennies are not locked away behind velvet ropes or restricted to the wealthy. They circulate, they hide in plain sight, they pass from hand to hand through millions of ordinary transactions, and the next person to hold a $29 million 1982 Lincoln penny might be you, might be someone you know, might be the person standing behind you in line at the grocery store, and that possibility, that democratic lottery of discovery and fortune that is built into the very nature of coins, is what makes the story of the 1982 Lincoln penny not just the story of a rare and valuable object, but the story of hope itself, of the enduring human belief that extraordinary things can happen to ordinary people, that treasure really does hide in plain sight, and that sometimes, just sometimes, the greatest fortune in the room is sitting quietly in your pocket waiting to be recognized.